see a bunch of people starting to pop in. So at this stage, I will keep the agenda in the background and we'll go ahead and get started. I'm really excited to kick off this series. So this is a series that I'm starting online with a lot of incredible speakers. So we have planned, speakers that are CEOs of, multi-billion-dollar enterprises. We have incredible speakers today with some amazing backgrounds. But really, this series is designed to push the whole outpatient ASC industry forward, to get everybody up to speed on all the technologies that are advancing. It feels like every single day there's new technology, new models coming out. And so today, I'm really excited to present two incredible speakers. We have Ayah Hamdan joining us from Plug and Play. Ayah is the global leader for the Plug and Play healthcare vertical. And if you're not familiar with Plug and Play, they've invested in over 2,500 companies. They have over 34 unicorns to date and over 60 offices around the world. It's really an incredible ecosystem. They have over 550 corporate partners, and they really are, an innovation powerhouse and ecosystem. And Ayah is at the forefront in all of that on the healthcare side. She leads the global healthcare practice. She's a brilliant, Harvard-trained healthcare leader, and she has deep startup and healthcare background. Most recently, she was also with Carbon Health. So she understands really, how to grow and scale technology and also how to invest and really, really has a good grasp on the upcoming trends. So really excited to share her experiences today. And then I have Dr. Wayne Olan, and Dr. Wayne Olan is board certified in radiology, neuroradiology, and is currently the director of minimally invasive and endovascular neuroradiology at Jupiter Medical Center in Jupiter, Florida. He's also a consulting physician for special surgery. Prior to that, until the end of 2025, he was the director of interventional and endovascular neurosurgery and associate professor at George Washington University School of Medicine. He's also led an incredible career, being both a partner and owner in surgery centers. He's done amazing things with companies like Surge Center that subsequently sold a huge portion of their portfolio to USPI. So he'll be sharing a lot of that journey today and a lot of insights. So, this series, again, it's designed to give macro trends as well as technology trends. So the first, segment of this series, we'll actually kick it off with both speakers talking about, the trends that they see. And Ayah, I'm going to start with you. You sit at really a phenomenal intersection of the latest technologies and at Plug and Play. I really would like to take a deep dive in some of the trends that you're seeing. And if there's anything in your background specifically that I missed that you want to touch on, feel free to do that as we, kick off and take a deep dive.
No, you give a great introduction, Ehab. Thank you so much for that overview and all the flowers that you give to myself and to Plug and Play as well. But happy to speak to the trends. Part of our job as investors definitely is to act as a fortune teller in a way, because the best investors can get ahead of the market. And if, the trend is in effect, then you're too late on placing bets. So, we have a unique insight and a unique lens at Plug and Play, definitely, because we are not only facing with startups, we're not only making, over 200 investments a year, we see the other perspective as well, which is what are the large institutions doing? And you take that and put it on a global scale. So that perspective allows me to really see what's happening in the market and where the market's headed. And right now, I would say without a doubt, the trends are in the AI's impact on the non-clinical aspects of healthcare, which, might sound obvious, but it's changing so rapidly. And for example, within the non-clinical AI tools, just a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, AI scribes were the big thing. And I think something happened that took all of us by surprise, which was Epic when it implemented their own AI scribe. prior to that,
Yeah.
companies like Abridge were the hottest digital health tools in the market. And so
Yeah.
there was kind of this fight for the different AI scribes. You know, we placed a bet on a couple great AI scribes, like Deep Scribe was one that Plug and Play invested in. And then there's this shift happening, and I hear it from C-suite exec leaders of, well, we're gonna maybe take a step back or be a little more hesitant when it comes to implementing digital health tools, because what if Epic just builds it all? And so there's this push and pull that's happening in the market right now between the leaders, the executives that already pay, you know, a large, significant fraction of their P&L towards Epic. And
Yeah.
and if they'll, a friend of mine said this recently, and I love the way he phrased it, which was health system leaders will take a B-level Epic tool over an A-level startup tool because it'll save them the
Yeah.
added cost. It'll save them the integration. So in terms of trends right now, I would say it's still in the non-clinical AI tools, which
Yeah.
includes largely things like revenue cycle management within that prior authorization. AI scribes, I would say, are slowly getting phased out the way that it looks right now. But we're still not quite at the place, from my perspective, where AI is being used clinically.
Fantastic. No, that's very helpful context. And what makes you most excited? I know you come from Carbon Health, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, as a healthcare leader, it's fascinating that you're describing that, you know, the clinical side hasn't yet caught up in terms of implementing AI, and you're seeing a lot more, let's say, administrative AI being applied. What
Right.
makes you specifically excited about what's happening, you know, with these macro trends as a healthcare, you know, executive?
What makes me excited is efficiency, to be completely honest. We all know how incredibly inefficient of a system it is here in the US and globally. And, you know, once I heard this statistic about the US is spending $1 trillion just on the administrative side of healthcare,
Oh,
that kind of broke my brain. And I think it broke a lot of people's brain, because then you see an entire market flooded with solutions that are trying to tackle that $1 trillion spend. So what gets me excited is the efficiency that AI brings. You know, I had my own hesitation and skepticism about AI being implemented in healthcare, but I would say it's one of those, it's not a binary yes or no. It's we see the benefits of this, so let's work towards getting to that point where we're extracting the benefits and reducing the harm. And just the impact that this can have on patient experience, quality of care, and really alleviating that burden from the traditional healthcare system, which I'm, you know, was excited about Sigmatic AI when you told me you started building the company you have, because ASCs present a huge promise in what they can do to alleviate just that burden that physicians are absorbing and the traditional care system is absorbing.
no, I appreciate that. I mean, what's really exciting for me about surgery centers specifically is, you know, 90% of them have physicians and surgeons as partners. And so it's just such a radical shift of mind when you have the surgeons as not only decision makers but partners and owners of the facility. And to me, surgery centers really sit at the forefront of technology and really one of the fastest adopters of technology.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I really want to pivot to Dr. Olan. Dr. Olan, you've led an incredible career as a physician, as an interventionist, and you've really, you know, tasted the fruits of being an independent, you know, surgery center owner operator. So tell us a little bit about that journey and why you feel, you know, surgery centers, you know, are really at the head of a lot of these macro trends.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for the generous introduction. And obviously, I've been very fortunate to get today where we are, but there's no slowing down in sight, as we've discussed. The father of three daughters, you're not stopping anytime soon, right? So, having said that, really, when you bear it down, the birth of the surgery center, as well as the success of the centers and then their viability, really isn't about the initial part, wasn't about the physician economics. It's about being able to deliver healthcare
Yeah.
in a much more efficient and outcome driven way where at the end of the day, the biggest benefactor of the surgery center explosion, if you will, is the patient. The patient has benefited logarithmically from the ability to provide healthcare at a much more efficient level, not just medically, but from the entire experience, from the time the patient gets on the phone till the time they're home and their recovery is even finished. Their entire experience is much different and much more improved using the center. You kind of touched on it. 90% of these centers have physicians in decision-making positions where they decide on the decisions in the subspecialty that they're trained in. If you look at hospitals, most of the hospital administrators, even if they're physicians, they're making decisions about subspecialties that they had never practiced in. But the nice thing about the surgery centers is every physician is sort of bought in. And at the end of the day, their patient is the one that's going to benefit from the improved outcome, the improved efficiency. And that's where it came in. You mentioned that 90% of these places have physicians in those decisions. Well, where are the other 10%? There you have institutions that might be forcing physicians to go to those centers. And I guarantee you, when you find centers that are not physician, where the physicians are not sort of the rainmaker, and it doesn't really have to be financially, but the decision-making process, the outcomes, the efficiency, and the experience is not the same. Everybody who works in all these centers, they're all handpicked. The patient outcome, the patient experience is the number one drive to the success of this. And that really, when you stay with that, that's what leads this down the pathway of really long-term and ultimate success.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that was really behind the thesis at Sigmatic is, can we empower independent physicians and surgeons? And, what's fascinating, there's 11,000 surgery centers in the US, and 70% of them roughly are still completely independent, right? So the remaining 30% have ownership with some of the large, national chains, whether it's USPI, Surg Center, some of these other national operators, but still 70% are independent, right? And so again, when you talk about the independent facility and its advantage in ability to adopt new technology, both with speed and alignment of the stakeholders of the surgeons, that's why it's such a fascinating, customer segment. That's why we at Sigmatic are really laser focused on outpatient surgery centers and outpatient facilities in general, because you have this mindset of innovation. I like to call it innovation culture, right? And it's a full circle sort of moment for me, having worked at Plug and Play, because Plug and Play is really a global leader in the innovation ecosystem. So Ayah, I want to shift back to you for a moment. What I understood from you and your opening statements is that you feel like technology is catching up, and there's this concept of personalized care, right? Mm-hmm. And I know innovators and healthcare, technologists are always in this constant struggle of value-based care versus building technology that fits in this sort of legacy fee-for-service system, right? Mm-hmm. And really pulling technology and innovation and one or two of those business models is sometimes very hard. But I'm curious, on the macro trends, are you seeing, personalized care, really providing the innovators the ability to go after value-based care models? Do you see the technology catching up? We read about Aura Ring, and we read about Whoop and all of these, RPM and biometric readers. Do you feel like the technology is shifting where the consumer and the patient is really at the forefront? Or is there still this constant battle of, as an innovator, are you going to go after value-based care or fee-for-service? I would love your thoughts there.
Yeah, of course. It's something that comes up a lot, that I think about a lot, because I don't know, I wouldn't say that I'm incredibly senior in my career, but even in the time of my career, I've seen so many shifts happen. I'm thinking back to when I was a college student and I was interning at Kaiser Permanente. I grew up in the Bay Area, California. So if you want to go into healthcare, you work at Kaiser Permanente. And at the time, the big buzz was patient-centered care. And
Yeah.
physicians were being retrained on how to listen to their patients more and speak less. And it was kind of perceived as this new and innovative thing around let's center the patient more in the care experience. I think back to that frequently because that has set the foundation to where we are now, which is the next wave, which is really consumer-driven care. And
Yeah.
wearables have allowed for so much of that consumer-driven care. I think wearables will continue to get more affordable over time. You know, FDA has loosened some regulations around wearables, I think earlier this year. And something that I don't think is spoken about as much is the ChatGPT Health Initiative. So this was announced earlier this year, and you have 40 million patients a day searching on ChatGPT to talk about their healthcare. I mean, this is just such a massive scale and such a massive distribution opportunity. So OpenAI recognized that distribution opportunity, and with launching ChatGPT Health, they're now integrated with over 3 million providers, and they did that in partnership with one of our portfolio companies, Be Well. So, you know, while the initial results were not grand from the ChatGPT Health outcomes, I think that it's going to continue to get better, but I hear what you're saying, Ehab, of you're kind of pressured at times to pick a team. Are you going to go the fee for
Yeah.
service? Are you going to go the value-based care? Are you going to listen to the consumer route? Or are you going to stick to the more traditional healthcare route? I believe in
Yeah.
nuance. I believe that nothing is ever black and white. What I would love to see more of, for example, is that bridge between the consumers and the more traditional care system, because whether we like it or not, patients, users, consumers are curious about their care. They want to dictate their care, and they're using their phones, they're using the internet, they're using LLMs for their care experience. So rather than them being put in a position where they're completely reliant on that, I would be curious to see more solutions around how do we bridge that kind of gap when a patient comes in and they're talking to their doctor about, well, I got this diagnosis from my function lab test. It's all here in my chat GPT. So that's something that I don't see too much of right now, or maybe some
Yeah.
tools to maybe bridge that gap between the physician and those highly consumer-driven apps. But maybe that's kind
Yeah.
of what we'll see more of in the near future. And rather than having to pick a team, it's let's figure out a way to make this all work seamlessly together is what I would like to see.
Yeah, I would say, you know, as a healthcare founder, healthcare tech founder, one of the biggest challenges is, you know, I kind of have to live in the future, right? And work backwards. And I also, with our team, we have to develop and deploy technology at almost breakneck speed that is effective for our customers, right? And right now we're primarily focused on outpatient, you know, surgery centers, owner operators, and really outpatient facilities and micro hospitals, right? And so that focus of that customer segment allows us to bring a lot of innovation, but we also have to, you know, look at where the industry is going and sort of live in the future and try and work backwards. And what's exciting for me is everything you just said. I feel like the technology has caught up and we can finally provide patient-centric care, you know, if we really leverage the power of AI and technology, you know, correctly. And it's not just going to be our company, it's going to be a series of companies working together, both physicians, you know, surgeons, primary care, you know, innovators, you know, physical therapy innovators, you know, post-therapy, you know, post-intervention innovators. So really providing that continuum of care that's connected end to end for patients. I think for the first time, really in decades, we can achieve that with technology that's readily available. And that's what's exciting for us. And so, you know, Wayne, I want to shift to you. So kind of thinking about the patient journey, right? And, you know, the way that I think about surgery centers, it's really maybe different from most people. I would love your thoughts on this. I think about surgery centers as really kind of the bedrock of innovation in the sense that, first of all, they can easily adopt technology. But second of all, you know, they're kind of in the middle of the patient's journey, right? The patient's journey doesn't start in the surgery center. It starts at like a primary care clinic or a specialist's office. They go to the surgery center for intervention and then they get discharged, right? So you have this patient in the middle, right, in the surgery center. And for me, I think about it as almost like a hospital without walls if it has the right technology. So, Ayah described, technology that, puts patients really at the forefront of understanding what is wrong with, some of their ailments. A lot of, millions of patients, according to her, are using ChatGPT, and really they're being educated by whatever procedure that they're maybe indicated for. So how does that affect, in your opinion, Dr. Olan, the continuum of care? How do you think these consumer tools, either make your life more challenging as an interventional, physician, or make your life easier? Is the patient coming to you better informed? Are they more confused? Is it helping you streamline their patient care? I'm curious your thoughts there.
Well, let's start a little bit back to what you guys were just discussing, because I will chime in. And you and I, because you're in the ASC sort of mindset, there's a separation here. There's a diagnostic aspect, which is what you were talking about. How do you diagnose the patient? What's the primary care aspect? Let's find the problem. Once you get to the ASC, you're sort of in the therapeutic aspect, which is very different. And the technology there is no longer the discovery aspect of things. It's more in the repair and the efficiency of a repair kind of thing. That's where the technology, the changes that we've seen. By the time the patient gets to any one of your partners in your surgery centers, we kind of already know what they have and what needs to be done. So that's a real separation. The stuff that's on the outside, the diagnostic tools that are coming, I fully get it. And I'm sure in the cancer arena, those are massive, right? Those are massive things in the lifestyle cancer arena, places like that. But by the time you come into your surgery center that morning for your procedure, and now you and I are partners, and in that journey, the technology that we're dealing with is no longer quite as diagnostic, but it is much more on the therapeutic side. How do I make this procedure much more efficient, safer, much more effective, and make the outcomes better? I already know what they have, and I'm not trying to be glib about it. And every one of your partners in this mix is part of that same arena. We're not in everyone that you're dealing with is probably in the surgery center business and tertiary care. So we're not really making the diagnosis. Yes, we see patients who come to us in pain, use imaging, make the diagnosis, but the therapies are usually pretty well described as what needs to be done. Now, where does the technology jump in? Well, I will tell you something, especially surgical stuff. How do we make things more minimally invasive, much more efficient, and recoveries much quicker? And that's where the surgery center, the ASC, your portfolio really makes not just a slight difference, but a life-changing difference. Patients already come to us with their diagnosis, and now how do I reach up into the sky, and I'm not joking about this, and move their stars around? That's the difference. Then that's the arena that we're living in.
Understood. So I guess, to tie what both of you are saying together, the biggest advantage to, let's say, AI or technology right now is on carrying a lot of the administrative or operational burden. It's still early stages, what I'm gathering from both of you, on the clinical side, right? There's mass adoption, like you said, of millions of people, researching their indications on ChatGPT, but on the physician side,
options, right? What are my options? I have this problem. What are my options, right? AI is now the new WebMD. It's now the new discovery. Yes. And trust me, you get a great consolidation of opinion using that. You could go to 10 different doctors with the same problem, with the same imaging, and you could get 10 different diagnoses. Well, now AI and wearable technology, diagnostic technology is really narrowing that down. And at the end of the day, that's all wonderful. But for what we're doing, what we need is therapeutic type of technology. How do we take these patients, get them in and out of the facility quicker, take a procedure, and we're going to talk about this real quick. When we opened 12 years ago, and you know this, I have a physician who told me straight to my face, I will never do an outpatient hip replacement. 12 years ago, ever.
Yeah.
I will never do an outpatient hip replacement. You have to struggle now to find a hip replacement done in a hospital.
Yeah.
Struggle unless the patient has other problems that requires them to be admitted. But the hip replacement surgery, I mean, robots, the ultimate technology is out now in these surgery centers. Surgery centers are getting the patient to rehab the same day for procedures. So one of the things about these centers is you have to know the technology that exists, but you also, and you already said it, we're already living in the future. What's coming?
Yeah.
What's the next thing? How am I going to be adaptable? I need to be maneuverable. I need to be versatile to know what's coming next. A lot of these surgery centers that developed 15, 20 years ago had no idea or concept of the procedures that we're doing now as outpatients. And now we're starting to venture into minimally invasive stuff that's in the hospital, cardiology, interventional radiology, interventional neuroradiology, things that people never would have considered doing as outpatients. Cardiac angiography, carotid stenting, things like that to be done as an outpatient because it's efficient. We're safer. We're better. The imaging, the technology may be better, but it's better at the end of the day. It's a much more efficient way for the physician to guarantee or at least do the best that he can to tell his patient that their outcome is going to be the one that they're all searching for. And that's kind of where it's at. At the end of the day, it's outcome driven. Cost almost, I hate to say it, becomes the driving force because you have to be able to provide the care. And that's where you come in. That's where these technologies come in. They provide us with the ability to do something much more efficiently, to practice medicine. Physicians in general are not the best business guys. So that's where we partnered with you. But it's true, right? I'm good at providing, but now I partner with you to make sure that I can afford to do this. I can afford to give my patient the best possible chance at the most efficient outcome, get their life back, get the length of their life back that they're looking for. The old joke we make, give them the 30-year warranty kind of thing. But that's where we partner together, where I say, I think I know what needs to be done. How will you help me provide it to the best opportunity to give my patient the best chance to do the best that they can? And at the end, you talked about it, every one of these surgery centers that have physicians involved, everybody in that center is handpicked. The best nurses, the best scrub techs, the best docs. Behavior matters. The physician's behavior matters. Everybody does. So the patient's experience is so high end. And that's what makes people come back. That's where the accountability is.
So let's double click on that, Dr. Olan. So if I understand you correctly, a lot of the procedures being done safely outpatient right now, 5 or 10 years ago, people didn't fathom that they can do this outpatient, right? Is that safe to say? And then let's
say, even take it to the next level, they thought you were joking. Like
So
it wasn't
walk
even an
us-
imagination. I had a very world-renowned joint replacement surgeon look me in the eye and say, "You're out of your mind." And now every single joint replacement they do, hips and knees, is at a surgery center.
So walk us through the specialties. Like, where did surgery centers start? I understand it started like in ophthalmology, you went to GI, and then there was a huge
little
growth.
GU, a lot of urology. Like the founders of Search Center was an ophthalmologist and urologist. Just looking to provide better care. How do I take away a bunch of the red tape? How do I eliminate some of the stuff that my patient has to go through in the hospital? Efficiency. Use that word. Keep that word. Because I will tell you, that's one of the things at a surgery center that's up on the wall. Make sure we're efficient. 2-hour procedures take 2 hours. Normal turnover time takes whatever time it's supposed to take. Right? Get people in and get people out. And that doesn't just work for the patient, it works for everybody working there. The doctors can now do 5 cases where maybe they used to only be able to do 2. So more people are getting taken care of. So they started in other fields and evolved into orthopedics, evolved into neuroscience, evolved into now cardiology, evolved like plastic surgery is almost all done now as an outpatient procedure, long procedures. So when you look at subspecialty stuff, and the reason why people are doing it that way, it's not really about the physician finance. It's not. It's 100% about the ability to deliver the best care you can for your patient population. Every single one of us will tell you that.
A higher quality product, built built by the physician for the patient, right?
Or at least
And
input, but the physician's asking for help as to
yeah,
how to provide that product. You know
excellent.
what I mean? And that's where you
Yeah,
come in.
absolutely. Yeah, and
We're
that's
not,
that's
you
been
know,
really, it's been core to our thesis. You know, how can we build, you know, technology that cuts through the noise, that makes these physicians and surgeons, you know, be able to provide, you know, this high quality product and to scale it, right? And that's the component that we help with, right? So, you know, what our technology does, it helps, you know, surgeons find other partners, and whether they're investors, and helps really syndicate a brand new surgery center. It can also help you recruit surgeons for an existing surgery center, but it also lifts a lot of your administrative burden. Ayah, I'm going to shift to you. I'm really curious about your experience with Carbon Health, and you've seen maybe other companies come online, like AI native primary care. Like there's a recent company I heard about. It's called Lotus AI, and there's another company, I think they're called Clear AI, which is this concept of AI native primary care. And we talked a little bit with Dr. Olan about the diagnostic and then the patient's journey from diagnostics into the surgery center. I'm curious, if you see, you know, this is something that, you know, can really cater to the patient end to end, and if you're seeing technologies, you know, in the plug and play portfolio or really globally, really, you know, providing this radical or this, you know, this AI native, you know, diagnostic care of patients. Do you feel like the technology is mature enough to really go in that direction, or is it still a little early in your opinion?
A great question. I do think about that tech-enabled brick and mortar primary care
Hmm.
clinic model. You know, given I was at Carbon Health, had an amazing experience there prior to joining Plug and Play, and you know, the main competitor to Carbon Health, One Medical. And while they have made amazing strides in, you know, scratching the existing model, let's try something brand new, never been done, building their own EHRs. And
Yeah,
I think what they did extremely well was having that positive UI for the patients in terms of a seamless experience for scheduling, getting an appointment
yeah,
same day. But that was pretty limited to primary care and urgent care as well. So I
yeah,
could say my Carbon Health experience, forget as an employee, as a patient, something's wrong. I know it's not so serious to where I need to go to the ER. It's as simple as getting on my phone, booking an appointment within the next hour, driving down the street, paying a $50 copay that day to go see an urgent care, and getting whatever
yeah,
prescription I need. So that is the standard that, you know, we strive towards when it comes to a seamless care experience. But it's a little flipped when you think about comparing those tech-enabled brick and mortar clinics to outpatient care, right?
yeah,
Because they were striving towards primary care, and they even started opening near major health systems so that they could refer out for specialty care but maintain that primary care patient intake. So anyways, while there were advancements, there were still plenty of challenges, for example, around quality of care, and never being able to branch out into something like surgeries or OR, which is where outpatient is showing its promise. Um, and I'm really fascinated, you know, leading up to this discussion, I was doing some research, and you know, HCA, I'm sure you're familiar.
yeah,
Their most profitable health system in the country, $70 billion in revenue. And there is a quote from, I believe, the president of HCA back in 2023 saying that they want to flip their ratio of outpatient to inpatient. Well, at the time it was 12-1,
yeah,
but they now want to go towards 20-1. So they're already seeing where the competition is going, and rather than losing their patients to these ASCs, these independent care facilities, they want to be able to still
yeah,
keep that patient population and absorb them back into the system for when they do need more severe care treatment or higher acuity
yeah,
cases. So that was something that I think, you know, maybe HCA had some foresight on where the market's going in terms of just the growth of outpatient care that not every health system will have, or necessarily have the budget or the nimbleness to take that approach. But you asked Ehab about startups in the market that maybe are taking on more of this AI first or AI native approach to care. And
yeah.
you know, I'll shout out Aikido Labs. I think they're a super interesting company in our portfolio. We invested in
Amazing.
them at the early stage where they looked quite different. They were really a public health oriented population, um, based, they were working on building the largest population-based data set. And actually, they're to this day focused on supporting the unhoused population. So they published a white paper just about a month ago or so on street medicine. And so the way that they're envisioning the future of care is actually the AI doctor. So anyone
Yeah.
will be able to walk
Interesting.
into a physical clinic where they've bought the clinics themselves and be able to
Yeah.
engage with an AI doctor. So that's a really bold and brave thing to say, where we're still in this time of, skepticism around AI in the clinical care setting. So I applaud them on being brave enough to say, yes, we are going to have an AI doctor, but they're actually doing it through a very public health oriented and community health oriented lens on prioritizing care for unhoused populations through this street medicine approach.
Yeah, I
no,
want to chime in, if you don't mind, for 1 second on something.
yeah.
There is
Yeah,
a trend coming, talking exactly about what she was talking about,
Yeah.
but partnering imaging with it.
Yeah.
She mentioned that she went to the doctor, she got a prescription, but a lot of times they need imaging associated with that as well to
True.
get
Yeah.
to their diagnosis. What's the ultimate goal? I went to the doctor with a problem. I need to know what the problem is. There's always imaging associated with it. So then the doctor hands you, or in your clinic, they hand you a prescription for an MRI. Now the MRI appointment's 2 weeks from now at some facility that you had to go seek at yourself. So
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
a trend now, and there are companies out there starting to do this, partnering primary care and imaging
Yes.
as
And
the outpatient, the entire outpatient experience. So it's an all-in-one. Yes, it could be a little bit of a longer day, but
Yeah.
it's still a day, not a 14-day experience. And if
I
you're going to talk
totally
about
agree.
trends down the road,
Yeah.
we may see a trend, not just with more of the sort of ERs and imaging, but
Yeah.
primary care and imaging partnerships that
Yes.
allow the patient a much higher level of efficiency moving forward to get from point A to point B.
And that's exactly what you see on the screen here, Dr. Olan. This is exactly how we at Sigmatic envision this whole end-to-end sort of patient-centric model working, where these newer AI forward primary care technologies coming online, whether it's Lotus AI, even Sigmatic. In UAE, we partnered with an amazing company called housecall.ae. They're one of the leading primary care groups that are 100% digital, and they're actually starting now to build brick and mortar facilities. And then we've also had the opportunity to partner with amazing companies like GlobalMed, which have really incredible, telehealth and remote patient monitoring infrastructure. And so being able to tie these technologies together, streamline the diagnostic process, and really, streamline the intervention. If a patient is indicated for a surgical intervention or a minor, minimally invasive procedure, getting that procedure done, and then also continuing to monitor them, post-op. So the way that we think about it at Sigmatic is really this ecosystem, right? So whether you build your own sort of, digital care or primary care or specialty care sort of AI native footprint, it's all designed to make access to care for the patient easier to your physical space, right? And you really have to have a strong telehealth backbone, which is why we partnered with some of the most amazing companies like GlobalMed. And I'm not just saying that because the CEO of GlobalMed I think is on this call, but really it's really thinking through from the patient's perspective and the physician and surgeon and provider's perspective. How can you alleviate the administrative burden? Because again, the patient's journey doesn't necessarily start in your brick and mortar, right? You really have to get that access to patient, get them educated on what you can do to treat their ailments as early as possible. And that's what's exciting about us, about what we see, and that's what's exciting about the technologies we see coming online. But look, Ayah, I want to double tap on something that you mentioned. You've been pretty consistent on this call saying that, hey, the clinical diagnostics is not there. The biggest opportunity that you see is really on the administrative burden. What are some of the companies that you've recently invested in that you're really proud of that are making kind of leaps and bounds and really applying AI in healthcare at scale? I know it's not an easy thing, but is there anybody that comes to mind that's really made some big impacts? I know you have a huge portfolio of companies from Guardian Health to others, but I'm curious, what are some of the recent ones that you've seen come online?
Yeah, it takes a long time, notoriously, for healthcare companies to become more established, to become unicorns, to get a massive acquisition, to go public. We don't move in the healthcare industry at the speed of B2B enterprise SaaS. And so that's just a fact. And I do think it is for the better, but unfortunately, investors want to invest in companies that are going to make money fast and that have an exit within, the lifetime of a fund, which is less than 10 years. So it was funny. I recently hosted a health systems roundtable. It was a private discussion. I would say 50% of the room was physician innovators, and then everyone else was building in healthcare at a health system, et cetera. And really great raw discussion that lasted over 2 hours. By the end of the conversation, our discovery was that investors are the problem. VCs are the problem, actually. And that was hilarious for me as the host of the conversation. But they made a fantastic point. I mean, the entrepreneurs in the room felt it, because something you mentioned earlier, Ehab, was you're put under this immense pressure to build fast and scale fast. But the infrastructure in healthcare is not set up to scale at the rate of enterprise SaaS tools. So so there's kind of, we talk about the misaligned incentives. For example, payers and the healthcare facilities are never aligned on the incentives. And that's something that you hear over and over. But now there's this added layer of misaligned incentives of the VCs, and the entrepreneurs don't have aligned incentives because the entrepreneurs need to deliver the best tools to be adopted by their customers. And the investors just want fast growth, fail fast, Silicon Valley mindset. So in terms of the companies that stand out, I mean, we have a really successful portfolio at Plug and Play. Iterative Health, we just announced as our latest unicorn. They've been at it for a little over a decade. It was not easy. They really stuck through the hardship. Started off as like a great GI tool, a device for detecting polyps, but they've now evolved into powering clinical trials for GI. And so they just hit 1.3 billion or so valuation. So congrats to them. That was a new announcement. There are some more recent companies that I'm also pretty proud of and enthusiastic about. For example, Glasses AI is a company that is at the pre-seed stage. They are building a cryptographic receipt for whenever an AI inference is run, their users, so may it be a clinic, an ASC, a health system, their users will have a receipt that they can refer back to on which AI was run, all the details of it, and the time that it was run, what it was used for, the purpose behind it, et cetera. And so that'll have a benefit, because more and more we're going to have policy coming into place around AI regulation and AI monitoring. And so there was a bill passed in Colorado. There was, EU passed a region-wide policy around AI monitoring and regulation. And so we'll see more of that in the states, around state by state, but also eventually there will be federal regulation around AI that's being used in the clinical setting. And so that's one company that I think is getting ahead of that wave, because not to go on a tangent here, but for example, I still think about there was regulation around price transparency. So suddenly major insurers, major providers were mandated to report their data on pricing, but this kind of ended up on their desk one day and they didn't have the tools to track or report that pricing data. So you see companies like Turquoise Health or our portfolio company Handle Health building the tools to make that more seamless experience, and to at least equip them and empower them to be able to report that data. So I see something similar happening right now. We know the regulation's coming, so some great companies are getting ahead of it. But we don't really know when that's going to come. It might be 6 months, it might be 6 years. So we'll just have to see where that goes.
Yeah, and of course, we're so fortunate to be a plug and play portfolio company, and it's full circle for me. I having been a director at Plug and Play and then becoming a health tech founder, but then it was so amazing to have Plug and Play, back us as a really an incredible partner and investor in our journey in our company. But
well, I want to also acknowledge, maybe speak a little bit why we made the investment in Sigmatic. It was your experience. You'd seen it on the ground, you'd built these surgery centers, and that's something that we might see other companies struggle with. There's a disconnect between what they believe the problem is in the market and what they're building for and what's actually the problem in the market. And so, I want to give you that credit as well of you'd seen it firsthand, you'd really gotten your hands dirty, and you knew exactly what needed to be solved. And not only that, but what would get adopted. And you kept in mind that belief and that value that Dr. Olan and I both prioritize, which is efficiency. How do we make the system more efficient? And that's also, I know, something that you keep as a priority at Sigmatic AI too, as well.
I really appreciate that. That vote of confidence was huge for us. I mean, you guys were, one of our earlier institutional checks, and it really opened up the floodgate and really, helped us propel and accelerate both our funding trajectory, but really our growth trajectory. And it's been a phenomenal couple of years and pushing product out, to customers that they're really happy with, and it's an exciting time for us, to be building an AI native operating platform that's really focused on helping physicians and surgeons run and scale more profitable businesses, and it's, we focus mainly on the administrative burdens. So Dr. Olan, I want to shift back to you. You had mentioned to me the pain of prior auth, right, as a big administrative burden. And, walk me through, how that is such a hiccup for you as a physician and as a clinician, when you're trying to really be a proponent for the patient, to get healthier as quickly as possible, and why you think, that's really a big pain point.
Well, obviously prior auth, and I just touched upon it. The one big roadblock it sets is efficiency. It makes things less efficient. If you are providing healthcare, the protocols that we use, especially in the surgery center arena, we're not talking about experimental trials and treatments and things like that. More often than not, most of them are run-of-the-mill, basic treatments: return to life, return to play, return to activity levels, return to work, avoid long-term disability type of stuff. And prior auth, really all prior auth is about is the insurance company's desire to either delay or not pay. Let's cut down to the chase. And then how do we sometimes fight when authorization is denied? We have to do peer-to-peers. At no point have I ever in my career done a peer-to-peer where the other person on the phone call was a peer.
Yeah.
It's peer to no peer. And I don't mean to be glib. Yes, it's a physician online, but I could be talking about an significant intracranial procedure to a pediatrician in Iowa. Who can't spell the procedures that I'm doing. And they're just delaying care, delaying the ability to pay. So a way to streamline prior authorization to be able, and let me be very clear on this, to provide the correct care that patient needs, the right thing to be done, would be enlightening and empowering. Right now, a lot of it falls on either the center or the physician's office. And if they don't have prior authorization, then the center, both the physician's office and the center, become less efficient. Now we have a hole in the schedule because we need to get the patient in. And you have angry patients. So their experience is no longer the positive sort of, streamlined one that we're all trying to strive for to start with. Prior authorization is one of the most sort of, it's not hindered by logic, is sort of the best way of looking at it. Because if you told them it was hindered by logic, they'd be just as pissed off. And so, I understand sometimes when you do need authorization if you're providing stuff that might not be mainstream. But the majority of these centers, the majority of these physicians are experts in facilities and procedures that are mainstream, and allow us to take care of the patients this is their insurance that they're paying for these instances. And prior authorization is one of the largest inefficiencies in all of healthcare, not just the surgery center.
And really, what's been interesting for us is obviously I know that the prior auth doesn't necessarily start in the surgery center. It's almost like this, I hate to call it a political football, but it's a football of responsibility that's thrown on the clinic back and forth to the surgery center.
Surgery center is almost they are the recipient of the bad news.
Exactly. Correct. And the administrative burden is on the clinic, the referring clinic, right? And so,
No doubt.
this is something that we've actually focused heavily on at Sigmatic is how do you streamline that patient journey from the clinic to the surgery center? And then we tie that efficiency or that innovation that we've built to block time utilization and really making the surgeon's life much, much easier in defending the patient's care and that protocol of continuum of care. So I know we have about 5 minutes left. So a couple of things I wanted to mention. First of all, if anybody has questions, feel free to raise your hand. I'm going to try and unmute your mic. If you have any issues, you can drop any questions in the chat. I know we had some incredible speakers today. We're going to be doing this type of series regularly. Our goal is to really push the industry forward and really provide some of the latest trends and technologies and highlight some of the innovators in our space, but also some of the leaders that are pushing all of this innovation through the pipelines. Because it's, everything that's happening in healthcare, it's more than just Sigmatic. It's more than plug and play. It's more than, Juniper, your medical organization, Dr. Olan. It's really all of us collectively working together to push the industry forward. And Ayah, you carry a lot of weight, as the global leader at, plug and play, overseeing the healthcare vertical, and investing in over 200 companies a year. That's an incredible feat, right? So you're, at that velocity, you're probably, seeing thousands and thousands of technologies, to filter down to 200 investments. That's a velocity we don't see at a normal venture firm. So really thank you for being that innovation engine that pushes these founders and these technologies forward, but also that connective tissue to industry. Bringing the clinicians.
She's very front line.
Exactly.
We really
Dr.
appreciate
Olan.
you looking at that. Thank you.
No, as are you. You're the one hands-on with the patients and on the ground. So thank you for your work.
Yeah, and it really takes all of us working together. And that's the thesis behind Sigmatic. It's also the thesis behind this series is really to connect a lot of innovators that are passionate about making healthcare better, for patients. So as we wrap up here, again, I want to open it up to the questions. If anybody has any questions, I believe you can raise your hand. Again, you can drop any questions in the chat. If there's no questions, that's fine. We can, reserve time for, we can reserve questions for our next session. And by the way, I'm going to be sharing, the roster of attendees. And this session is recorded. So if you want to share it with anybody else, if you find this session, educational and really interesting, please feel free to, forward it. We're going to be breaking this into, smaller, content as well that you can share on social media, both for you, Dr. Olan, and Ayah. So it looks like we might have some questions coming in the chat, but any final thoughts, Ayah, that you want to share, or Dr. Olan?
Well, I have a thought, and one of the great sort of privileges of my career, it has been affiliating myself with your vision. And so I just want to tell you that being able to be affiliated with your vision, because I know what your vision is, and it's basically to, again, make my patient's experience better. If we all keep our eye on that prize,
Exactly.
I understand the investment and I understand it has to be monetarily feasible. I get all that. But once stuff starts coming off that rail of patient experience, that's when it loses traction. And I know your vision stays right on those rails. And I really appreciate partnering with you on this, because I do believe we're going to be able to look back and say we were able to really change the world a little bit.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Dr. Olan. You've always been an innovator. I think we've known each other for over a decade now. And
long time now.
You've been a visionary since day one, and you've really, kind of pushed and really contributed significantly to the vision. I know we traveled the Middle East together. We're really passionate about taking this innovation of outpatient surgery centers globally. And then now, fast forward, a decade later, leveraging the latest technologies to really even make that journey easier, both for the surgeon partners and the patients. It's an exciting time for us, at Sigmatic. Ayah, any final thoughts that you want to touch on?
Maybe just reiterating, I talked a lot about AI, advanced technology, and, that's given my vantage point being based in Silicon Valley as a VC and an investor. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is the patient experience, driving down costs, easing the burden on the systems. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for Sigmatic to keep doing what you're doing because, like Dr. Olan mentioned, it's very clear, Ehab, where your priorities are, which is bringing better care to patients and doing it in an efficient way. So the buzzword of the day is efficiency.
Yeah, 100%. That's what we're laser focused on. And that's what we're delivering to customers every day is really, helping drive their bottom line, helping recruit surgeons to increase their revenue and really tighten their cost expenditure, whether it's related to case costing or optimizing block time or even streamlining the prior auth process, to get more patients on the schedule. That's all we do at Sigmatic is really efficiency. It looks like we had one question come in line, so I'm gonna, if you guys have just one or two more minutes, let's go ahead and answer this question if you're up for it.
I see the question, and I'm going to tell you, interesting. I love the thing that you said at the beginning because you're right. We're in a can't afford to fail environment, right? Can't afford it, but we also are in a can't afford to wait environment.
Yeah.
And especially on the majority of these AI-based technologies, especially on the surgery center side. So the technological advance or the surgery center side, you're going to take risk and implement. And so a lot of your homework's going to have to be done up front to decide that this is a technology that provides benefit. On the diagnostic side, you're 100% right. We'll be able to track our outcomes and show impact probably in long term much easier. But in the surgical environment, you're going to have to take your risk up front with most of this because you're not going to have the time or the sort of the advantage of waiting. You're going to have to see if this benefits you and make the decisions prior to implementation.
And this is why, Milan, that's such a great question. And Dr. Olan, you mentioned speed, right? This is why we love outpatient surgery centers. Again, the surgeons and the physician partners are innovators, right? That they became independent, they launched their own system, and they're just so much faster at adopting technology and also I would say fine tuning and streamlining technology, for their practice or their facility, than maybe large hospital systems, right? And it's not to say that our technology doesn't work in a hospital. It actually, much more maybe effective in a hospital in some cases, but for us as a venture-backed company, I can't wait 8 to 18 months to get our technology across the finish line. I just don't have the energy to go through 8 layers or 10 layers of management at a hospital system. And that's really where plug and play helps. Companies like ours are really a lot of new innovative companies that come online with really breakthrough technologies as they really are that connective tissue to large enterprise, whether it's a large hospital system. And in the meantime, we're just kicking butt in the outpatient facility, because they make decisions faster.
But a lot of your vetting has to be done pre-implementation.
Yeah,
you need to be vetted in the pre-implementation, not post-implementation and look back at it. Yes, we'll have that information long term, but your success is going to be in your vetting pre-implementation.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we're seeing with our customer deployments. So I know we're just over time, but any final thoughts on this last question just before we sign off here?
Dr. nailed it. I mean, yeah, we can't stick to the status quo. The status quo is that it costs the system $8,000 for every night that a patient stays in the hospital. The status quo is that patients lose, 3 to 5% of their muscle mass for every night that they spend in a hospital. So while I agree that ROI is now more important to prove than ever, the status quo just isn't working. So we need to reinvent the wheel.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining in. Again, this first session was about macro trends and what's happening out there. The next session, if you enjoyed this session, is really real AI pilots and applications that have worked and scaled in the field. So hopefully you stay tuned for the next session. We're going to have some amazing speakers that have scaled, multi-billion-dollar enterprises in healthcare, and really hope that you find the sessions informative and really that you stay tuned. Feel free to send me any messages or any follow-ups as needed. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ayah. Thank you, Dr. Olan.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Take care.